Hi, it's Megan Gill here, and I am here with Paint Flowers and More today. And I'm going to paint a autumn landscape, mainly a tree. I would like to paint a maple red tree that I have out here that is changing colors, and it's absolutely beautiful. But trees are, um, I see a problem for beginners. So what we're going to do today is we're going to break it down, and we're going to paint a tree. So let's get started. If you like what you see here, you can go to my newsletter down below at meganbaileygill.com/sign up, and you can see my newsletter, and we can keep talking to each other. And wouldn't that be great? Okay, so when you're dealing with a tree, you don't have to worry too much about all the things, okay? Like, it's an organic thing, so let's not make it too difficult. I'm going to do a little bit of planning, but not much. So here's my paintbrush. This is a 6x8 little pad of watercolor paper, and I'm going to just simply, draw a horizon line. That is a big thing. Beginners like to do it down here at the bottom. Always have a horizon line and then start your tree. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come in and put a little trunk. And notice I am really lightly doing this. I don't want this to be everywhere. Okay. Because you don't need it everywhere. You don't want all these lines everywhere. So notice what I'm doing here. I'm doing a whole bunch of Y's. And that's it. So I'm going to bring it up close so you can see that. You see how it's just a bunch of lines. Notice I don't really even have any of them connected really to the trunk. It's like, what is happening right here? You don't need to know. It's okay. And I'm just going to bring in some. Now, when you're dealing with a tree, one of the things that I have seen is that people don't like to overlap things. But I want you to start looking at trees and see how they grow. They grow in a line. When they grow, their leaves grow like this, like horizontal. So let's keep it that way. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take some water, and I'm going to just put I'm painting with water, and really what I'm doing is I'm looking at where my Y's touch each other, or, the tops of the Y's, which is the branches, okay? And I'm just dabbing some water in here, okay? And I'm overlapping a lot of it. Like you can see there, that's good. See, it's pretty glossy right there. Okay, so now I'm going to take a little bit of orange. We're going to start with orange. Now, I already had some, and a little bit of brownie orange. And I'm going to just start plopping it into these puddles. Now, look at what I'm doing. I am rotating my brush. I am going in the same place that I had those puddles, and I'm just putting them in clumps. Nothing major at the moment. Oh dear, I just dropped that. That should work in our favor. Okay, so here I am. I have a good start, basically, of just a little bit of color. And I'm now going to start looking at my shape of my tree. So the tree I have outside actually kind of comes to a point. So I'm just going to plop a little point up there. But it actually comes down a little bit. So I'm going to just add some more. Now, do y'all see it's a dab, dab, dab? You see it's kind of rounded, and it's in horizontal lines. Okay? So that's part of it. Now we have a good start, but we're going to add more color to it. So right now I'm going to go into some of my red, and I'm going to make my orange even redder. Okay. And now I'm going to start coming in here, and I'm going to look at kind of the tips. Now, because it's wet, it's going to bleed, and that is a good thing. We want it to bleed, and we want this to be easy. Notice I'm not overdoing it. I'm just barely tapping, and I'm not over painting. I'm not licking the canvas. You know, when you go da 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 da. Not doing that. I'm letting it sit there and just do its thing. So I really like what's happening right here. And that's because it's really, really wet. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to try to replicate it. So I'm going to get me another, I'm going to go right here, add a little bit more water to this one. And I'm going to go back to a little bit of my yellow. Because when I look at my tree, the bottoms are kind of yellow on some of these, on the bottoms of my tree. Like it's still turning a little bit. So I'm actually going to get a little bit of green and I'm going to get a lot of water because I don't want this to overpower it. And I'm just going to put a little bit of green underneath some of these colors. You see how it's not that much at all. I don't want a lot. I want more of the color. Okay. So I'm going to let this sit for a minute. We don't want to overdo this. It needs to sit. It needs to dry. So then we're going to start working on something else. So let's work on some dirt. So I'm just going to come in here. Notice I covered up my trunk right there. And all I'm doing is just applying some watercolor in here. Don't need to do too much. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it there, but I'm going to actually look at what's behind all of this. And for the sake of right now, I'm going to do some trees, some other trees, like Christmas trees, kind of. And they're far in the background here. So I'm just going to put a straight line. Did you all see that? Just a little straight line. I'm going to go ahead and do that over here. And one over here. Notice they're different sizes, or heights, I should say. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm leaving a whole lot of water or white space. I'm trying to leave a lot of white space underneath here or between them. And it's just a dab, dab, dab. It's almost in a Z technique. Now this one's going to be a little bit smaller and shorter, and then this one. And I do it with my brush horizontal, and it's just a Z pattern. Now you're like, I didn't realize that they were Z's. But Z trees works pretty well, as you can tell. Now, this one's looking a little bit rough, but that's okay. We'll come back to it. So I'm going to check up here and go, so this one's really wet and this one's a little red, but that's not all that's wet right there. So I think I'm going to go back to it and look at it. Okay. I'm going to get a little bit, I'm going to add a little bit of brown to my red here, darken it up just a little bit. And I'm going to go back and on the tips of my tree, like I'm looking out the window right now and I can see it, I'm going to start doing some dots of this darkness. Notice I'm going outside some of these little areas. And I'm still with my big brush. I promise we'll get to a smaller. You can feel like you can control that smaller one just a little bit. But notice I'm going outside some of these clumps. And I'm going into those light spots a little bit, but it's a dot. It's a literally dotting leaves. Think of how they're kind of organic. They kind of go everywhere. And layer upon layer upon layer. Okay, so that's not bad. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, because these are almost dry and I'm letting it sit, I'm coming back. I'm always doing, it's all about choices and letting things rest and then coming back to them. So I'm going to come back in and I'm going to add just a little bit more. Notice I went straight in and didn't even add a puddle or anything. I just went in because I kind of wanted it a little bit brighter. It's coming towards me. I wanted to add a different layer to it. So I am now going to take my second number brush. This is my other favorite. So it's a Simply Simmons number 2 round brush. There is not much special about this brush. You can use it for acrylic and watercolor, but I use it just for watercolor. I got it at Michael's. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here with my green. So I've got some green. I will tell you that doing it with a small brush like this, it's harder to mix colors, I feel, because you can't control how much water you put down. So it kind of gets a little, I don't know, diggy in your hole, like you dig for the water. So always make sure that you have enough water in your palette here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and lightly add to these. Now notice this isn't so much as a Z. I'm actually coming in here and doing individual lines. Because when you look at a Christmas tree, you can't really tell, like the branches do that, right? Like they hang and they hang in horizontal lines. But do you see how my lines are broken? So this one was the one that looked a little weird. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to come in. Do you see how I do a little bit differently and I make the line go down? And because there's so many different layers we're adding, it's starting to look like it has multiple dimensions because we've got something back there. We don't have to keep working it over and over and over again. I mean, with the same color, you got to let it dry and then you add a layer. You got to let it dry, add a layer. So let's do some of this tree with it. So I'm going to go back to some orange. I'm going to take some orange and red together. All right, I take that back. I want to still get red. So I'm going to go with my darker red. This red here that I'm using is a little bit more pinky. It's kind of a magenta. So it's adding a little bit more different color. Okay, so now I'm going to start talking about clumps of leaves. Notice it's not everywhere. I'm not covering up a lot. I have water on my brush, but it's not crazy. And sometimes I'm using the whole brush like that. And then sometimes I'm just dotting it in here. And when I'm dotting, I'm also dotting a little bit in the white because the whole key about an actual tree is that you actually see through trees. You don't just have a full tree. We don't want lollipop trees. I can't stand lollipop trees. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to add a little bit more here. I like the way this one is combining everything. That's doing a pretty good job. And I'm just kind of covering up some of that green. I don't have to have it everywhere. I just want it a little bit behind it. And you see how I'm just working to get some of that in there. All right, looking pretty good. Now you're like, where's the trunk? I can't figure out anything. It's kind of weird. Okay, so let's do a little bit of trunk, but I don't want my brown to actually go over or blend with this. So I'm only going to do just this part for the moment. So this is a burnt umber. And I love burnt umber here. But I'm also going to take a little bit of that burnt sienna just to warm it up. All right, and I'm going to just come in. Now, when you're doing a tree trunk, it's still a Y. It comes up from the land in a Y. there is these roots and they kind of branch out. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of some darkness in here and add it just so we can kind of see it. Now, I'm being real careful when I do this that I don't have it bleeding everywhere, but all of a sudden we're starting to look like we have a tree. And that's good. All right. Oh, you got to make some of this happen though. These are where the baby branches are. Okay. All right. I like it. So let's go back in. I want to go in with some real red now. Let's just go red, pure red, pure red. Didn't put any water with it. I mean, it's bright. And here we go. So I'm going to just come in and dot it in here. Now, it always dries lighter than when you put it on, okay? So that helps. So don't go, oh my gosh, it looks like it's bleeding. It will dry and it will dry lighter, okay? So here I am adding some reds. Red dots, letting them blend, letting them do its thing. Okay. Notice I'm kind of at the top of everything. I'm not doing it too much at the bottom, like in this area. I'm kind of doing it at the top. Okay. Not bad. All right. All of a sudden, that gave it a lot of dimension that it didn't have before because it's all about darks and lights. Okay. So with that being said, I'm going to actually go into just pure orange and that rusty brown yellow ochre color. And I'm going to add some of those in here. Notice I'm doing this at the bottom of where all those reds are. They can kind of go together or blend, and that's okay. Okay, so it again dries lighter than, but you see I'm still protecting a lot of those lights or the fact that you can see through my paper, which I'll be honest with you, I wish I would have done a light blue wash first, but that would have delayed our lesson. All right, and I'm liking that. Do you see how I keep coming out right here? I feel like it's a lollipop. So I'm kind of trying to get that to come out a little bit. You see how just by changing that a little bit, I've got a different shape. I'm going to add a little bit of that. Okay. Now I'm going to get darker with my brown. So I'm going to go just into this brown. And I'm going to go into one side of my tree. Now my tree is still pretty, the trunk is kind of wet still. And notice I'm not touching everywhere. I'm only touching like some places. And I'm just getting a little bit of a dark color there. And notice it will blend. Okay, not bad. Now I'm going to give actual dirt this up. Now, I have a lot of leaves down here, like leaves that have dropped, right? So I'm going to just add a few red maple leaves. Okay, and notice they'll blend together. You don't have to worry about it too much. Okay, now do we need to work on this green tree anymore? Maybe. I want a few on the back here. So what I'm going to do is just add some greens in the back here to kind of indicate like, oh, there's something back there. Notice I got quiet when I said that. Oh, there's something back there. Okay, but now that I've done that, I want to bring the other ones out farther. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to get a little bit more green. I'm going to add a little bit of blue to this green. And you see how that just darkens it up. And I'm going to come in and add just a little bit into the darks. Notice I'm kind of doing it at the bottom of all of what we've just been doing, okay? So I'm not completely covering up everything, but I'm at the bottom because there would be a shadow underneath them. Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. Don't you love it when it comes together? I do. Okay, so little Z tree here is looking a little bit better. Do you see how this one right here, I went at a different angle? So when the tree is big, there is some branches that come out to you. And that is what we're doing right here. Okay. I'm liking that. All right. One of the things I'm going to do is I am going to add something to the background here. There's some dots in here that I'm not particularly loving, but we'll be okay. So I'm going to add a little bit of this periwinkle blue to the back here. And all I'm going to do is just, I'm lightly bringing it into some of these spots. I've been pretty strategic about how they don't touch much because I don't want it to bleed everywhere. Notice I'm also getting really light towards the bottom, and I'm able to add just a little bit into these areas. All right, I like that. Okay, we're getting there, people. Okay, we're at the 20-minute mark. That's not bad. Okay, now here's what I want to do. This tree still looks a little spotty to me. So one of the things I'm going to do is take my red brown and I'm going to start making a little bit more of a water mixture. And I'm going to start adding some leaves to that. And because it's wetter, it's going to add more of a shadow blob. So it's going to maybe blend some of those dots a little bit while creating some of its own dots and kind of blending in some things. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Okay. Now, I'm liking what's going on here. See, it's dyeing down some of those red dots. I'm actually coming in and stealing some of those red dots and moving them. Notice I'm kind of going outside and letting them sit there. Ah, that's nice. Okay. I'm liking it. I'm going to take that same brown and I'm going to work on this just a little bit more. I want this to show up more. And I'm going to start making some more marks. Not everywhere. Some of those marks have to go in front of these because you see all kinds of different layers inside a tree. Okay. And sometimes the branch goes out with nothing. And you just have to indicate it just a little bit. Okay. I'm liking that. Now, one of the things I like to do is I like to take an actual pin to some of this. I'm going to add just a more dark, just to add some pizzazz on some of these. Not all of them, especially those in the background, right? Like I'm not going crazy with it, but I love the way they look. Okay, I like it. Okay, so what I'm going to do real quick, and you can watch, I have the heated tool. I'm going to do this right here, and we're going to Dry it real fast. And then we're going to take our Uniball Signo 207 bold pen. Okay. And we're going to show you how I fix it. Not that it needs fixing. It could sit by itself. Okay. But you have to have it dry before you do it. So, okay, here's my Uniball Signo 207 bold pen. It is my favorite. And one of the things I do, you kind of need it to be dry before you do this. But I want you to look at when I go in and add some branches to this and how all of a sudden this thing starts coming alive. And I like to shade a little bit on one side. I'm going to go in here, add a little bit to these trees. You don't have to add too much because they kind of stand for themselves, but they are part of the story, so that's why I'm adding it. I'm not going to do anything to the background there. And you see how I kind of am still doing that Z, but I'm not doing it everywhere. It's just a little bit. I'm actually letting the paint tell me where I need to put some black pen work. Okay. So it's basically shading. Okay. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of that. And we got some dots here. So I'm going to actually come in here and look at, see if I can't go, oh, there's some leaves here. And I love, what do I do up here with the leaves? So really I let the shapes of my paint kind of guide me on how I actually do it. So I don't have any straight lines here, if you can tell. Like it's all kind of wiggly and organic and it's kind of squiggles. But notice it's all kind of at the top of all of these layers that I have. And that is my tree. All right, so if you liked what you see, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I would love for you to hear from you. And also, sign up for my newsletter down below at meganbaileygill.com/sign up, and I'll see you at the next Paint, Flowers, and More. Bye!